Hello everyone, this is Dr. Rebecca Sheffield. Welcome to another episode of the It's My Job podcast. It's been a little while since our last episode, but we're pleased to be back with episode number 11. The It's My Job podcast features student interviewers talking with adults who are blind or visually impaired, investigating important questions like how they use technology and how they connect with other people. Our interviews were designed by students for students. Stay tuned after the podcast to learn how to get involved. And please share with your friends and teachers so they can listen too. Now for today's interview. In this episode, Elora, a student from New York, is interviewing Ginny Owens. Ginny is an award-winning singer-songwriter, author, and speaker. You can follow her on Twitter at Ginny Owens. That's GINNYOWENS. Or follow her on Facebook by searching Ginny Owens Music. Her website is ginnyowens.com. And she has some great podcasts of her own on her YouTube channel. Just search for Ginny Owens. Let's listen to Elora's interview with Ginny.
So my first question is, Ginny, when did you realize that you wanted to be a singer-songwriter?
You know, I started writing songs when I was, 6 or 7. The first song I remember was when I was 7. And the first verse was, "Don't forget the water, don't forget the soap, don't forget the bathtub or you'll have to give up hope." Really good stuff. But I loved writing songs. And I think when I was maybe 12 or 13, I kind of had in my mind that maybe it would be really fun to be a singer-songwriter. And I remember that I used to write my best friend letters in Braille, pretending that I lived in LA and like that I was writing from LA. And she was always like, "You are so weird. Why would you want to live in LA? That's silly." And so that was always kind of in my mind when I was in middle school. But then I think as I got older, I got a little more self-conscious about sharing music. And so I would share my songs every once in a while, but I didn't do it too often. And until later in high school. And then I had opportunities at school and at youth group to share songs more often. But even by that point, I thought, I'm going to go into psychology or journalism. I'm not going to go into music. So I think it was partly because I realized that a lot of people sort of thought that maybe the only thing a blind person could do was music. And I found that to be super annoying and not true at all. So I had a season of just being like, no way, I'm not doing music. But then after I finished college, I had been sharing some of my music with different people. And there was a guy who worked in the music industry because I went to school in Nashville at Belmont University. And there was a guy who I met who worked in the music business. And he's like, "Have you ever thought of doing this for a living?" And I was like, well, I mean, it's in the back of my mind, but I don't know that it would ever happen. And, I kind of told him my frustrations with the stereotypes. And he's like, "Well, I don't know if it'll happen either, but we should at least take a step and record some of your songs." So we did that. And then I ended up getting a music publishing deal in Nashville and then a record deal after that. And so, and the cool thing is I have gotten to do like some teaching and some different things along the way. So it's been really fun to not just get to do music, but to teach other people about music and to talk, to encourage students and people in their journey when they're facing challenges. And so it's been music, but a whole lot of other things that I never would have expected. So that's been really cool.
That is really cool. Do you write your own songs or do you sing someone else's songs that they wrote for you?
I write my own songs. So I do have a few friends that I like to write with. And it's kind of a crazy thing. Like one of the things that you do when you record music, a lot of times, everybody doesn't do this, but most people do, is you sit in the room with people, sometimes people you know well, sometimes people you don't know at all, and you write songs with them. So sometimes it's total strangers and you show up and you're like bearing your heart and soul. And it can be a little awkward at times, but it's really fun to co-write, I think, for the most part, because it makes the process go a whole lot faster. I love to write my own songs because I always have a lot I want to say. But when I do it on my own, sometimes it might take me months or even sometimes a couple of years to get the song perfectly how I want it. Whereas if I co-write with someone, that usually goes a lot more quickly. I'm trying to think if I've ever even recorded something I didn't write. Maybe one song a long time ago, but 99.999% of my songs are things that I have written.
That is really cool. Where do you find your inspiration for your music?
I find it in all kinds of crazy places. So I live in New York City. And so sometimes I find it in just walking down the street and hearing the things that people say. Sometimes it's like I'll write a song, based on sort of the answer that I would like to give them to what I'm hearing, or the encouragement I would like to give them. A lot of times I write songs based on what my friends are going through or what I'm going through, and just working out those things. Sometimes I find it's a lot easier to write a song about a situation, write a song to encourage. Sometimes even it's easier to do that than to even have a conversation. I always say that songs are the conversations I'm too shy to have sometimes. So sometimes they come from just things I'm reading, things I'm thinking about, things I'm discovering. But for the most part, my songs are very personal. There are very few times that I sit down and kind of go, oh, that's a cool melody, and kind of make up silly lyrics that I don't really believe in. So to me, lyrics are so important because music is so important. And, we love our musicians and we listen to what they say and in their songs. When you listen, it's pretty easy to kind of pick up the words that people are singing and kind of get them in your head. So I want the songs that I write to be very hopeful and encouraging. And so I always try to end up, even if the song is about a really dark time, I always try to end up in a place of hope.
I totally agree with all that you just said. That's really fascinating.
That's awesome. Cool.
What's been the coolest collaboration that you have ever done?
Oh man, that is such a good question. I've gotten to do a few really cool ones. I think one of the coolest ones that came to mind was about a year and a half ago. I got to collaborate with a group called Resound, and you can find them online. They're amazing. It's a 3-person, it's like a trio. They're from Virginia, and they were on America's Got Talent, and they were so amazing. Oh my gosh. But they have all these beautiful songs online. And they sang with me on a song that I wrote called Stand With Me. And it's a song about just us standing together and learning to love and forgive each other, and learning what it means to really walk together. That standing together means that we walk together day in and day out, and we learn what it is to sort of walk a mile in another person's shoes, so that is really how we find unity, is actually going all the way together. So it was just really cool to sing with them because they have just amazing voices and they sing way louder than I can. So that was probably my most favorite collaboration, I think.
All right. Have you always been blind, or if not, when did you lose your sight?
So I have always been, for the most part, blind. When I was born, I had a little bit of sight until I was 3 years old. So I was in the process of learning my colors, and apparently my favorite one was purple. And I had a surgery that the doctor was hoping would restore my sight, and instead it basically just took what remaining sight I had away. So I lost all of my sight when I was about 3 and a half. And, I think I do remember sometimes going around the house saying, my eyes aren't working, or looking for my eyes or something like that. But for the most part, I just went back outside and rode my bike and climbed trees with the neighbor kids and just kind of went back to normal. So I think, when you're that young, the good part is you can adapt really quickly and you just do what you have to do. So that was a cool thing. And what's weird, I have some friends that lost their sight that early in life, and they actually remember seeing. I usually don't remember seeing unless it's in dreams. Sometimes I can wake up and know that I could see in the dream, but I can't remember anything about it. So it's kind of a weird thing. So in that sense, I feel like, I've never had sight, even though I know that I could see colors and people and things when I was really little.
Oh, that's very interesting. How do you travel when you are on tour being visually impaired?
So I do a lot of independent travel. I moved to New York a few years ago, and part of what I do in New York is go to school. I'm in grad school. But then when I'm traveling to my concerts and like speaking engagements, I usually take a plane and go by myself. And so I use a cane, and I use Ira a lot, which probably you and a lot of your listeners know about, which is the service where you can have someone watch through your camera on the back of your phone and help direct you. And they have GPS, which can be super helpful. They can help you look for Uber or Lyfts or things like that. So I make a lot of use of Ira, and it has worked pretty well for the most part. I've been traveling for a long time now, so I think I've kind of gotten it down, but I'm never afraid to ask for help. And, there are times when I could certainly do something alone, but if it's going to take me 15 minutes less time, if I ask a sighted person for help, then I will do that. So that works really well. There are times when I travel on tour buses with other artists, and that's pretty easy because there's always lots of people around if you need something. But yeah, it for the most part works pretty well. I find that people in general are willing to help. Like if I'm staying in a hotel and I need to find something, usually the folks at the front desk are very helpful. And, so for the most part, it works. And when it doesn't, you just find a plan B. So I, especially just with technology today, I found that traveling, especially with having like Uber and Lyft and different things that you can use in Ira, it has made the traveling experience so much easier.
That's really cool to know.
Yeah.
What challenges have you faced being blind as you have pursued a career in music, and how have you overcome some of them?
So I think one of the great things about a career in music is that musicians just love connecting with other musicians. Aside from the fact that most of us are kind of shy and introverted in our own ways, what I have always found is that like if we're recording an album and I go into the studio to work with new band members, they might be awkward for a few minutes, but once they realize that I can play and that I can speak the language they speak, we're friends. And the blindness thing doesn't even come up. Or, sometimes they have curious questions, but the really cool thing about music is it does seem to be a job where you can pretty immediately kind of move any barriers out of the way. So, if you can connect on music, then it doesn't matter who you are or where you've been. And so that has made it really cool. I think the challenges are probably, when you go to a new place for the first time, especially if I'm traveling alone. Sometimes I travel with a tour manager, but if I'm traveling alone, I often find that, it takes me anywhere from 5 minutes to a couple hours to sort of get someone to feel comfortable with me, so a new person maybe that's promoting the concert or something like that, just for them to feel comfortable sometimes takes a little bit of time. So I would say that's a challenge. And other than that, I think there's always just the challenges of when you are a blind person, there are certain things that will always require extra steps to do when you're traveling, whether that's navigating a new place or whatever, they're just things that you have to learn to do, or things that might take us a little bit longer to do. So those challenges will exist no matter what your career is or what your life looks like. But I think as far as having a career in music, there really aren't too many challenges to that. I'm trying to think. One of the things that I have learned to do is if I come into a session that I'm singing on maybe for someone else, or if I'm trying to sing a new song, I make a lot of use of my Braille note taker, and I'll write down melody in my own notation so that even though I can't read the printed music, I can pretty easily use my ear and use my own notation to be prepared for the session. So that seems to work pretty cool. So yeah, I would say for the most part, it's not terribly difficult. It's probably a lot easier than being a scientist in the regard of challenges, because there are a lot of barriers that are immediately just kind of non-existent when you are a musician, I think.
That's really nice to know.
Yeah.
Do you read music Braille?
Yeah, I do read music Braille. I have to admit, I don't read all of music Braille. I know when I was in college, I would try desperately to read my piano music in Braille, but I just found it to be so challenging to try to memorize one hand and then memorize the other. So I didn't rely on Music Braille for my instrumental classes, but I always use it, and I still even use it for just single line things, melodies, or I was actually a music education major in college. And then I started graduate work in choral conducting. So I always would use Music Braille to Braille out all the parts for the music. Like when I was student teaching and directing high school choir, that was like soprano, alto, tenor, bass, I would write out each of those lines. And usually I would sing them into a multi-track recorder and kind of record all the parts so I could hear how they went together before I did the song with my students. So these days I don't have to do that so much, but like I was mentioning earlier, if I am learning a new song, or even if I'm, on a plane and I have an idea for a melody, but I can't record it because that would be super weird to start singing on the plane. So I'll just write out the music, and that seems to work really well. So I'm really glad that I know Braille music. It is very weird and very hard, but I'm very glad to know it.
That's really cool. So I have started writing some of my own songs recently. So do you have tools or like technology for someone who is just starting out with writing their own music and is also visually impaired?
Yes. So one of my favorite pieces of technology is the phone, or if you have an iPad or an iPod Touch or any device like that has the voice memos app, I highly recommend the voice memos app. I use it. I think I have 4,000 voice memos. One of these days I'm going to clean them out, but it is a wonderful, wonderful app because you can label each little idea with whatever it is that you're thinking at the time. So I use that a ton every day, at least once a day. And then, so for me, I use a note taker. I use a HIMS Polaris Mini, and I love that device. And so I have song files where I will just write out any ideas I have. It's kind of like a big scratch pad, just like what if someone sort of had a notebook. Like most of my sighted friends have song notebooks where they just write all their lyric ideas down. So I have a file in my Braille Sense Polaris where I do that. And so that has been really helpful. I also, though, have like a slate and stylus that I'll take with me just in case, I don't know, something happens to the Polaris Mini. So that's always a backup. I love to read things. So like I use my Polaris Mini on stage to kind of keep up with my set list and to keep up with what I want to say between songs, or if I'm speaking, I'll use it to kind of have the outline of what I'm going to say. So I find those are super helpful pieces of technology. And, I guess like a Braille writer or slate isn't actually technology, but just being able to write down your ideas so that you don't lose them. Like one thing that I used to do when I started writing songs was I would have an idea and I'd be like, oh, I'll remember that later. And then I totally would forget it if I didn't record it. So I find that I have a lot of times I'll get more ideas if I'm recording them somewhere all the time. Sometimes I've used like little voice memo recorders that you can get, the little handheld digital ones. Those are also super helpful for that. So those have been helpful over the course of my music career. And I'd say those are kind of the main things. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. GarageBand on the phone is a wonderful app. There's several really great multi-track apps. There's also an app called Hokusai, which is an iPhone, iPad app. And it may also be available on Android. And it is wonderfully accessible, and you can record multiple tracks on it. So if you wanted to sing with yourself, or if you wanted to import like a karaoke track and then sing to that, you could. Or if you wanted to play piano or play guitar or something like that, and then record another track or two or a few of you singing, you can absolutely do that as well. So there are lots of really great accessible apps for doing things like that these days. And even I don't use it too much just because I have friends that do it much more quickly than I do, and so I let them do it. But there are really great leaps forward in accessibility in programs like Logic and Pro Tools, which are basically like very smart, built up versions of GarageBand. I mean, they're, just very much more high level. They're the software that people use for recording albums and stuff, but both of those platforms are very accessible now. So lots of blind and visually impaired people have access to the tools to record albums just like everyone else does now, which is really, really cool.
That is really cool. My last question is, what does a day in the life of Ginny Owens look like?
Oh man, let's see. It's probably more boring than you would think. It usually just involves a long to-do list. That's usually the first thing in the morning. I get up and kind of have my quiet time of prayer and reading and reflection. That kind of starts my day off better. And coffee first, always. And then making a long to-do list, which has to get done. What's interesting about working in music is that you spend a lot more time sort of talking about music and sharing it on social media and developing marketing plans than you do actually doing and creating music. So I'm always super excited when I actually get to the music part. So like right now we're working on releasing a few albums. And so a couple weeks ago, I went to Nashville and spent every day recording music, like maybe 6 days of recording music. But now I'm spending every day doing more kind of social media plans and like, okay, on this day, we're going to do this, and then writing up the post. So I do a lot of that in advance, just so I don't have to think about it on the fly and try to figure out what that should be like. So lots of like the nuts and bolts of the behind the scenes stuff. That's what usually happens every day. And then if it's a travel day, which during COVID, all the concerts have been canceled, so not doing too many of those right now, but on a travel day, usually I'll get up and go to the airport at a very, very early hour, and I'll take a cab or an Uber to the airport and then go to the city where I'm going to play, and then go do sound check and eat a quick dinner and do the concert and go crash and get up the next morning and travel again. So it's not like very thrilling and exciting, but it's fun. And I'm really thankful to get to do it for sure.
That's really cool. That was all my questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So can I ask you some questions then?
Yeah.
Super. Okay. So my first question is, what is your favorite song that you've written of yours so far?
Oh, that's a good question. I have ideas, but there's 2 songs that have actually been fully done. And out of those 2 songs, I would say both of them have some great meaning to them.
Cool.
The first one that I wrote, I think how I came up with the idea was my favorite, just emailing with a friend, and I said, give me words, and so she did, and one of them was headphones, and I'm like, that's going to be what my song's about. So that just always makes me laugh how I came up with a song by a simple question to a friend.
That is so fun. I love when that happens. Okay, so can you sing part of one of your songs, or would that be too hard and scary to do?
I probably could.
Cool.
Let me think of what part of a song I should sing.
Sing the one about headphones.
I will sing the first verse of the song Headphones. Here it goes. Cool. When life is giving you a lot of trouble, taking you down onto its level, you gotta put on your headphones and listen to music.
Nice. I love it. Oh man, I can't wait to hear the whole thing. So you'll have to send me a video of it when you do that. That's so cool.
Thank you.
Very, very, very awesome. Okay, another question is, who are some of your, I know it's always hard to say like one, so who are some of your favorite singers that you like to listen to right now?
Yeah, there are so many. I started recently over the quarantine just listening to music way more than I usually did, which I used to do. Now it's just like crazy amounts.
Right.
So I started to do, his name is Alvaro Soler, and he's a Spanish singer. And he's amazing. I love Latin music. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And then love listening to Sophia Carson. She's a Disney Channel actress. I love all her music. She's phenomenal.
Yeah, she has a great voice. Yeah, I like her too.
And then other singers, like pop singers, like Meghan Trainor and Adele and like that.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Okay, and last question. Well, okay, this is a two-part question. First is, what is your favorite subject in school? And my second question is, what's your favorite way to do work? Like Braille or speech? Like, what's your favorite way to get work done?
So to answer the first one, I would say favorite subjects, I have two. It would either be chorus or Spanish, because I'm huge on both languages. And my favorite to do them would definitely be with speech, because I feel I can get more thoughts out, and I love talking. So.
Yes, talking is so fun. I love that. That's awesome. Well, thank you for answering my question.
Yeah.
This is Dr. Sheffield. I have really enjoyed these questions. Awesome job, Elora. Nice interview. So as we wrap up the interview, I wondered if I could ask you both to share a little advice for the audience, maybe a suggestion of how they can stay connected with their friends while we're supposed to be physically or socially distancing, or how you see the school year starting and what advice you have to share.
You know, I think what is so important right now is to know that we are not alone in this pandemic, and that it is really good to connect with our friends and our family and have time, you know, not just by ourselves, like listening to music or doing things, but time with them, whether they're in the house with us and we're just hanging out and maybe playing games or, you know, having dinner, but even with our friends on Zoom or FaceTime, just being able to connect with people, I think is so important, and just have chat time. And the other thing I would say is school coming up, and I'm having to think about this too, being in grad school. I'm taking a little time to try and get myself organized and ready, especially because for a lot of us, classes are going to be online. And so just trying to kind of figure out how to organize that so I'm ready for that. So that means making a lot of new files on my Braille sense. And then also it means just kind of getting ready and thinking about how I'm going to schedule my time so that I get the most out of my day without getting too tired. So like when I'm going to get my homework done and things like that. So I think that would be my advice.
I agree with all that you said, Ginny. And I'd say I try to get to see all my friends that I've missed seeing. I know one of my good friends that I do dance classes with, we have been trying to go to take walks. So we're outside, you know, we're not super close together, but we can talk and we're getting fresh air, which is really nice. But using technology, definitely. I email so much a day, it's not even funny. With the upcoming school year, I would say to just be open to new ideas, because although I like having a specific schedule and knowing what's going on, we really need to just be open, because there are going to be so many new things and different things. It could be fun, or who knows what will happen.
Hi, it's Dr. Sheffield again. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the It's My Job podcast. What did you think? Do you like music? Have you ever written your own songs? Would it be fun to have a career making albums and performing concerts? We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think. You can share your thoughts by phone or email. If you have questions for Ginny or Elora, we'd be happy to pass them along, and we might even share your questions and answers in a future episode of the It's My Job podcast. Our phone number is 202-688-5044. That's 202-688-5044. Outside the United States, you may need to dial +1 or 1 and your international access code. Be sure to check with your parents first. You can call us and leave a voicemail, or you can send us a text message. Our email address is askitsmyjob@gmail.com. So askitsmyjob@gmail.com. No spaces and no apostrophe. Are you new to the It's My Job podcast? If so, welcome! We want you to know that you can find us on Facebook. Just search for Ask It's My Job. Each of our episodes is also on the Perkins Paths to Technology blog. Check us out and leave us a comment at perkinselearning.org/technology. And finally, we have a YouTube channel called It's My Job, where you'll find all of our podcasts. If you missed episode 10, head over to YouTube to hear what Mohammed learned from Dr. Adams about his work as the president and CEO of the American Foundation for the Blind. This was our 11th episode, and we want to make many more, but we need your help. If you're a student who is blind or visually impaired and would like to be an interviewer on a future episode, please have your teacher or parent contact us via phone, email, or our Facebook page, and we'll get you matched up with an interviewee. If you're an adult who is blind or visually impaired and would like to be interviewed, please send us a message via email, phone, or Facebook, and we'll get back to you. Once again, our phone number for text messages and voicemail is 202-688-5044. Our email address is askitsmyjob@gmail.com. We have a lot to be thankful for in this episode. Thanks to Elora for a great interview, and thanks also to Mrs. Anderson for her help in getting everyone connected. Thanks so much to Ginny for sharing her time as our interviewee. This interview was facilitated by me, Rebecca Sheffield. Thanks to Perkins Paths to Technology for the blog posts. Our music is from purpleplanet.com. With so many of us working and studying from home, we hope this podcast is becoming a great opportunity to learn from each other and increase awareness about all the amazing jobs that are being done by people who are blind or visually impaired. Have a wonderful day.